Welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 215. And today's date is November 14th, 2013. And the title of this episode is The FBI is Reporting That Lone Wolves May Be Planning Attacks in the U.S. And we will get into that a little later in this report. And for all those people who are just subscribed in YouTube and have never visited the x22report.com site, come on over. We have many things on the site. Every day I update the Sentinel alerts. I make some comments on different articles. You can take a look at those. I have on top there's a tab called Economic Collapse. This is a dynamic timeline of what is happening leading up to the collapse. We also have inflation, deflation, track a couple products here, and we can see, if there really is inflation or deflation. And we also have the people. This is the forum of like-minded people who are talking about the economic collapse. It costs nothing to join. You just go there, you pick a username, password, and pretty much your email address, and that's it. It doesn't cost a thing or anything like that to join. Or if you don't want to join at this time, you can just go on there and just read what other people are saying. It is completely open, so you can read everything that's going on there. Let's get into the economic collapse news. And what do we understand? We understand that Europe is completely falling apart. I know the president of France, the Eurozone officials, Merkel in Germany were trying to convince us that everything was just perfectly fine, that everything was in a recovery mode, and that is all completely false. I hate to say it. What is really happening is the economies in each one of those countries is starting to decline. They're failing, they're collapsing, they're imploding on themselves. Right now in Italy, their recession has just entered its third year. Italy's economy has entered its third year of a recession after its gross national product continued to contract in the third quarter of this year. Now, Italy, their unemployment rate rose to about 12.5% in September. This has been the highest since 1977. And if we notice that almost all of these countries are now in the double-digit unemployment percentages. I mean, if we look at France, we look at Spain, we look at Portugal, we look at Greece, we look at Cyprus, even Germany's unemployment is going up. And the total unemployment all across the Eurozone is at 12.2%. So what does this tell us? It is up from 12.1% to 12.2%. But actually during the summer, they told us it went down from 12.1 to 12.0. And for some reason, they had a miscalculation. And when they corrected their calculation, it went from 12% all the way up to 12.2%. So things are definitely getting worse in Europe. And what are we seeing in Portugal? Well, a new report shows Portugal's economy has suffered a sharp slowdown in growth. And their 2014 draft budget reveals that it has to impose more austerity measures next year. And what they're going to do is they're going to slash retirement pensions by 10%. They're going to cut salaries by 12% for those who earn more than 600 euros a month. So everyone is going to receive a lot less because these countries are taking on more debt. Unemployment is going higher. And this cannot be sustained. And this is why this is continuing like this. I mean, over the summer, the French president was out there letting the world know that France is coming out of the recession. They're heading into a recovery. And guess what? That is completely fizzling out now. And the French recovery is really, there is no French recovery. And the French economy contracted by 0.1%. It was expected to grow by 0.1%. So the opposite is actually happening right now, and their unemployment is continually going higher. Now, in Germany, what we are seeing is that RWE, it's a German utility, they are going to cut 6,500 jobs. And they're doing this because they're going to trim capital spending as it joined peers in warning of a deep crisis in Europe's energy industry that would keep a lid on growth in the foreseeable future. So since 2011, they have already cut, with this new job cut, 13,000 people in Germany, and we can see where this is headed. It's the same thing that happened to every other country. More and more people are going to be laid off. Their unemployment is rising. They are heading down the same exact path. Hey, maybe they can manipulate the unemployment numbers like the U.S. does, so it makes it seem like nothing's wrong. Now, here in the U.S., Walmart misses their revenue, and they blame this on many, many different things. If we look back to the first quarter of this year, when Walmart misses their revenue, they said it was the weather. That's what they blamed it on. And it was other factors, and that's why they missed their revenue. In quarter two, they blamed weak consumer spending, payroll tax, and the lack of inflation. That's why they missed their revenue at this time, at that quarter, in that quarter. In quarter three, well, the store sales just missed, and they have no explanation this time. I'm going to give the explanation. People don't have the money to spend. When unemployment, when we're not using the manipulated numbers, is in the 24 to 25% range, and the underemployment is very high because now people have part-time jobs instead of full-time jobs, and when there's almost 1 million people dropping out of the labor force in October, that's the reason. People don't have disposable income, especially the poor. They are consolidating. They are only purchasing things they absolutely, absolutely need. And let's even take this a step further. Since the EBT food stamp program, they cut their costs, they're going to see sales decline even further in food. Guess why? Because now they have less to spend. So we're going to see food stores receiving less money because people are not spending as much. Now, there was a time when Cisco was out there saying that their sales are incredible, and everyone was looking at Cisco saying this is fantastic. But right now, Cisco is in big, big trouble. Their Q2 revenues was expected to be up around 4%. Instead, it is down to it's expected to be down around negative 10%. And this is a huge, huge problem. And this tells us that other companies are cutting back. Their sales are dropping. And that means their revenues are dropping. And we see this happening all over the place. And if we look at September's trade balance, and it is the worse than the worst estimate. What has happened is that this was the largest trade deficit gap with China posted on record. And what this means is we are importing a lot more than what we're exporting. So there is a huge, huge problem because we don't have manufacturing anymore in America. We are not exporting anything. Actually, we are exporting something. It's called inflation, and we're shoving money outside of the country. But that's all going to come back anyhow. But this is what is happening at this time, and we can see that the economy is in really big trouble. Now, the initial jobless claims miss expectations for the sixth week in a row. Following the end of the plague of the system glitches last week, and the Labor Department admits that 5 states' estimated levels, the initial job claims print remains a 4-month high right now. And this is the 6th straight week of disappointment for the critical real-time indicator of the economy's health. And what we're seeing right now is Lockheed Martin is laying off another 4,000 people. And at the end of this year, there are going to be 1.3 million Americans who will lose unemployment benefits on December 28th. Because we have to remember and think back when all this started, the government stepped in and said they were going to extend unemployment benefits. Well, guess what? Those are running out, and 1.3 million Americans are going to lose them. So what do you think is going to start happening here? Now, what else is going on here? Well, the federal student loans just surpassed $1 trillion, and the delinquency rate soars to all-time new highs. And if you remember, a couple of reports ago, I reported that the government stepped in and said to all the students who are in student loans, listen, those people who are underwater in student loans, and what that means is those people who can't find jobs in their industry and or have a part-time job and you can't pay for this massive student loan, we will modify, or maybe you won't even have to pay anything at this time until things improve. That is a sure sign that something is wrong. But this goes on to say there is a reason why U.S. consumer revolving credit card credit growth is getting lower and lower and lower, and at last check posted a mere 0.2% annual increase. That reason is that, as the New York Fed disclosed moments ago, federal student loans officially crossed the $1 trillion level for the first time ever. The quarterly student loan balance has increased every quarter without fail for the past 10 years. And right now, the delinquency rate on student loans is soaring and has just hit an all-time high of 11.83%. That is $120 billion in student loans will be discharged. So what are we seeing here? We are seeing a massive, massive bubble being created in the student loan. We're seeing it in real estate. We're seeing it in student loans. We are seeing it in the stock market. We are seeing it in the treasury market. Just remember that these are all bubbles and they're all going to come crashing down. Now, there is a huge wave of disaster that is going to hit us very soon from the housing market. And the LA Times is reporting that the next several years will start to see principal payments added to interest-only payments on a large amount of second mortgages taken out during the boom years. The estimate is that $30 billion in home equity lines will reset next year, $53 billion in 2015, and then ultimately soaring to $111 billion in 2018. Some mortgage and credit experts worry that the billions of dollars of home equity credit lines that were extended a decade ago during the housing boom could be heading for big trouble, creating a new wave of defaults for banks and homeowners. What do we know about housing right now? Well, we understand that J.P. Morgan, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Citibank are laying off thousands and thousands of people from their mortgage departments. Why would they do this if the housing industry is booming? Very interesting. What else do we understand? Mortgage applications are plunging. People are not buying homes. The new home builders just reported cancellations are skyrocketing. What else do we know? Pending sales, they're declining. The hedge funds and the investors who bought these houses for cash are trying to get out of these homes. The Fed has not let up on the amount of money they are giving to the banks to purchase all these foreclosures. They are piling cash into the banks, relieving the banks of these housing, this toxic real estate, and this will not end. This will only increase. Things are going to get worse. But what do I see in the corporate media? This is a great time for flipping. You better get into the housing market now because interest rates aren't going to stay this low. They are creating this illusion to get these people in there to take the houses off of the investors and the hedge funds' hands, and they will be left holding these homes as the market comes tumbling down, just like it did in 2008. I am sorry, but in 2008, during the summer, the corporate media, Ben Bernanke, and everyone else was out there telling us that the housing market is stable, everything is fine, it is picking up, flipping is incredible, now is the time to buy, rates are coming down, it's incredible, and guess what? All those people who purchased at the height of the market got stuck with these really, really expensive homes with huge mortgages, and all of them foreclosed. And this is why the Fed is continually purchasing these homes from these toxic notes from the banks, and they haven't let up with, what is it, 2 years now, and they're continually doing this. And guess what? They want to increase this. And we have to remember that during 2008, what did Ben Bernanke tell us? He told us the Fed doesn't see a housing bubble. The Fed told us that the subprime securities are contained, and that the Fed does not forecast a recession during this year. In the same year, the recession happened. So we have a new Fed coming in, the Fed chief person coming in, Yellen. What is she telling us? Yellen says benefits of QE still exceed the costs. Yellen says QE cannot continue forever. And you have to remember, whatever, and this is not a government official, but whatever the Fed official says or government official says, it's always the opposite. So whatever I'm saying and whatever she's saying right now, think of the opposite. Think of this. Yellen says QE cannot continue forever. What she's really saying, QE will continue forever because they can't stop. Yellen doesn't see an asset bubble in housing prices. There is a housing bubble. Yellen says QE is not aimed at helping to finance U.S. deficit. Think of the opposite. Yellen, no one has a good model on what influences gold prices. Yeah, we know what influences gold prices. You smacking it down and dumping paper gold onto the market. We understand what is happening. Okay, now we understand in New York the stop and frisk law that they have in place was deemed unconstitutional. But what happened was they had to relieve this judge, and they reinstated the stop and frisk. But a report came out that said only 3% are convicted out of 2.4 million stops. Because guess what? This is not a way to find criminals. Just to stop random people on the street and have them frisk you and take your belongings. First of all, this is completely unconstitutional. Is against the Fourth Amendment, and I don't I understand why everyone's battling back and forth with this, because most of these Supreme Court justices are on the take, or the NSA has something on them from all the spying that they've done, because this is completely unconstitutional according to the Fourth Amendment. And these stops that resulted in almost 150 arrests, only half of those led to conviction or a guilty plea of some kind. So this type of stop and frisk does not work, but we understand why they are doing it. They are doing it to keep fear and the ability to stop anyone at any time to detain you, to frisk you. And we know why this is happening, because we understand that the collapse is coming, and they want to do away with the Constitution. Actually, Bloomberg was out there saying that he would like to get rid of the Constitution because he believes that it is old-fashioned. Now, what else doesn't work? Well, they found out that the behavioral profiling program conducted by the TSA at airports across the U.S. cannot be proven to be effective, and its application is highly arbitrary according to the government's own watchdog. And the Government Accountability Office says in a new report that techniques used in the Transportation Security Administration's screening of passengers by observation techniques program in which TSA agents or behavioral detection officers attempts to read into airline passengers' behavior before possible risks are basically no better than chance. Now, seriously, do you really think these people can sit there and look at you and determine, oh yeah, this person is a risk? No, they have no clue. All this is made up. This is to keep fear, to keep these policies, to allow them to search you whenever you want, and we can see what this is. But guess what? The Department of Homeland Security continues to resist the analysis of the behavioral indicators. Yeah, because they don't want this to go away. They want to keep this because they understand the collapse is going to come, and this will be a complete police state. Okay, now, the Department of Homeland Security, God, I love the Department of Homeland Security, is soliciting information from potential contractors for a new program. And this program will enable DHS to identify criminals and track family relationships and to track people and understand how each person is related to each other, which is called social profiling. They are going to implement DNA tests. Barack Obama has already said that he wants a national DNA database. And eventually, what they want is a DNA reader. And this could replace all of the internet passwords and all the stuff that you use for security for bank accounts. Instead, these DNA readers will read your DNA, and that will give you access to the internet. It will also track you through the internet. It will allow you to pay for goods, and it will track you how you pay for goods. And the system will also be able to connect the dots of who you know, who you're related to, and create this all-encompassing social profile of every single person. Now, this law was passed under George W. Bush, which allows the federal government to screen the DNA of all newborn babies in the United States. So going forward, what they want to do is they want to create this massive DNA database. And they're going to start off with all newborn babies. They're going to take their DNA, they're going to be their information is going to be put into this database system, which then will be which will be used then to be used with their DNA readers. And this is how they're going to go forward. So at this time, they're trying to pass a law where it makes it legal for them right now to take existing people's DNA and put them into this database. And America right now is slowly but surely being transformed into a big brother, militarized police state. DNA identification, facial recognition cameras, passive listening devices, automated license plate readers, social profiling. This is completely getting out of hand, because what do they really want to do? They want to control you, and you. That's what they want to do. They will know when you leave your house. They will know when you go to the bathroom. They will know when you meet up with friends. They will know what you are doing every single time during the day. It is almost like having a government agent stand right next to you and follow you around all day long. How would you like that? Okay. DHS is creating new fusion centers, and they're going to be taking the control of the local police. Department of Homeland Security doles out billions of dollars to convince local police departments to surrender control to the federal agency. A recent report indicates that intelligence gathered at precincts will be shared among all levels of law enforcement. And eventually, what DHS wants to do is the agency wants to take control of the local police. They want to take control of the county sheriffs, and they want to be the main federal government agency that will control all local police departments in every single town, in every major city. And this is how they are going to take control all the way down to the local level. And we can see why they need to do this because, again, this all leads up to the main collapse because the system right now cannot be sustained. When we look across the Middle East and we see what is happening with every single country, the U.S. is completely losing control of them, we see what's going to happen. And as soon as these countries start saying we are no longer using the U.S. dollar and they start sending them back, this is when the trouble begins. And we see it happening already with Saudi Arabia. We see it happening with Egypt. We see it happening with Libya. Libya is completely imploding on itself. The militants who are rising up against the puppet government are starting to take control of their country. And they are pushing and pushing and pushing. And as soon as there is a threat to the U.S. dollar, because we have to remember, the U.S. invaded Libya, kicked out and killed Gaddafi, and implemented a puppet government, set up a private central bank, and now uses the U.S. dollar to trade oil with the U.S. dollar. And what these people are doing is they're revolting against this and taking their country back from the central bankers. And when there is a threat and all this starts to fall apart, we will see something being pushed forward. And when I say push forward, what I mean is some type of military strike. Because the central bankers will go down kicking and screaming with what they like to do, which is called war. That is how they're going to do this. Now, yesterday I reported on the Obama administration pushing for peace. They want peace so bad with Iran. After 30 years of saying that they're a big threat, they're going to drop a nuclear bomb on us, now all of a sudden it's okay, we want peace. And we can see bits and pieces of their plan now starting to shine through. And if you need to look hard at it, what they are saying, and they just said it yesterday, Carney came out and said it, listen, if you put sanctions on Iran, the president will only have one or two options. And the main option would be a military option, which means war. So what is Obama trying to do? Well, during the Syria event, let's just go back to that for a second, he and the administration knew from different polls and different readings, the American people were against war. They didn't want it. So what he did was he switched it and pretended that Congress had to make the decision. But we all know that it was always Congress's decision to declare war. But he did this because he understood that the people did not want war and he didn't want to look bad, so he put it back on Congress. And when Congress really didn't want to vote on it because it would have been, it wouldn't have looked good for them if they voted for war. And if they didn't vote for war, the people who are spending tons and tons of money on their campaigns and giving them a lot of money would say, hey, you're not doing what we're telling you to do. And this was a tough situation. And this is why John Kerry went out there and blurted out, if Assad would just remove his chemical weapons, that would be the thing that we're looking for. Putin picked up on this, and that's how we had this whole thing turn around. What they're doing right now is they're saying we want peace, and they're pushing for it very, very hard. We want peace, but listen, if you put sanctions on Iran, we might have to use some type of military option. So right now, the House to Senate act swiftly to pass new Iran sanctions. 63 House lawmakers are calling on the Senate to act swiftly in the passage of a new round of Iran sanctions that have been heavily opposed by the White House. So what are they doing at this time? They are setting up the false flag event. It is working out perfectly exactly the way they want it. And what the House and Senate is saying is that the passage of these new round of sanctions will convince Iran to end its nuclear activities. And we understand that They didn't work in the past. We understand that Iran is joining the BRIC nation. We understand that Iran has made deals with China, which they're bypassing the U.S. dollar and making deals using another currency. So the ban and the sanctions are not even working. And Obama knew this, and months ago he started to ease the sanctions without the approval of Congress, of course, and he started to ease the sanctions on Iran, and here we are today because they are setting everything up for the next false flag. And how are they setting this up for the next event? Well, we understand a couple of things. We understand that intel, and it was released to CNN just to put it out there so everyone saw it, that Assad could be hiding chemical weapons, and he's taken those chemical weapons, a huge cache of them, and hid them someplace else so the UN chemical inspectors couldn't find them. We understand, yesterday I reported on that a group came out and said that Iran could have a dirty nuclear weapon already devised and ready for use by today or in another month, a more advanced type of weapon, and they are setting the stage. And now the FBI Director, James Comey, said Thursday that cyber attacks are increasingly representing the most serious threats to homeland security and in the next decade will likely eclipse the risk posed by traditional international terror organizations. Testifying with top officials from the Department of Homeland Security and the National Counterterrorism Center, Comey told a Senate committee that the cyber risk is a multi-layered threat posed by thieves, hackers, and others who are able to travel the world via the internet at the speed of light. There are no safe neighborhoods, Comey said. National security officials are working to identify self-radicalized operatives or so-called lone wolves who may be planning attacks. The challenge of the homegrown violent extremists is that the person really doesn't hit all the tripwires, Olson said. While often inspired by groups like Al-Qaeda, these operatives aren't often formally affiliated with terror organizations. Al-Qaeda in Iraq is at its strongest point since its peak in 2006, and this year has significantly increased its pace of attacks. The group is exploiting increasingly permissive security environments in Iraq and Syria to fundraise, plan, and train for attacks in the U.S. They are pushing this agenda forward. They are laying the groundwork right now for a false flag event. Now, there was another warning by Anonymous. I don't know, they came out and said this, and Anonymous issued one of their civic-minded warnings yesterday on behalf of the people of Los Angeles. Anonymous has indicated that they have information which leads them to believe that a false flag event similar to the Twin Tower attack in New York is in the works for the Citibank building. The chief tenant of that building at this time is Freddie Mac. They are specific in their information, with the attack expected on Friday, November 15th, which is tomorrow. They indicated that their information alerted them to SWAT drills being conducted in the downtown area in a manner different from other drills which have been recently carried out. And I do remember the drills going on in LA. They also stated that the insurance coverage for the building has been dropped with the exception of those portions of coverage which provide for special conditions, physical damage, and coverages related to terrorism. Just over 5 months ago, extensive terror drills were held in LA as part of the 2013 National Homeland Security Conference, and I remember that drill going on, and it definitely was being held. This, in addition to the changes in the insurance coverage, gave rise to the reasonable suspicion that something reprehensible may be in the works. And this, I don't know if it's true. This has just been reported today, but tomorrow we'll have to see what happens. And it is, the evidence of them dropping insurance coverage and things like that. But tomorrow is Friday. We will see what happens, and we'll see if something takes place. Listen, everyone, we all understand that there will be false flag events. We all understand that the central bankers, the collapse of the economy is coming. There is no doubt about it. There's no way out of it, and it will be here. The thing that we have to remember is that it is impossible to pinpoint when something is going to happen. All we can do is take all these indicators, put them all together, and try to figure out when they will arrive. But the best thing for everyone to do is to stack gold and silver, prepare with food, water, supplies, batteries, lighting, toiletries, medication, and things like that. This is what everyone needs to do, because if there is a power grid type of situation, a cyber attack on the financial institutions, and you cannot get your money out, you should have cash available. If there is a you know a dirty nuke, a chemical attack, a any other type of attack, you need to be ready and ready to be prepared with alternative means of surviving. And this is why I'm doing this, to let everyone know that something is coming. Listen, if I told you a week before the World Trade Center's planes will crash into it, they will completely collapse, people would say you're absolutely crazy. But it actually happened. So right now we can see that they are setting everything up, they are getting everything prepared, and something will definitely happen. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.